You are listening to Spotlight Sessions with Justin Bamforth. The program provides an inside look at the creative field through exclusive conversations with industry professionals. Every episode is recorded live each month in the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Check out the show links to learn more and join for free. This episode was previously recorded before a live listening audience. Tonight's guest is artist, designer Steven Overturf, who runs Overturf Design Studio, his personal creative outlet and hands-on practice where branding, illustration, and product making all come together. And over the past 13 years, he's worked across agencies and in-house teams to build identity systems, campaigns, uniforms, and merchandise, all with intention and precision. But a major chapter of Steven's career has been in professional sports, including work with the LA Galaxy Soccer Club and the Houston Texans American football team, where he collaborated closely with Nike and league-level partners on various projects, including uniform rollouts for the team. But beyond the logos and launches, Steven is deeply invested in people, like mentorship, creative leadership, and building work that's rooted in purpose and not just aesthetics. He often describes himself as an artist first and a designer second, and that mindset shows up in how he approaches his strategy, craft, and collaboration. But in this conversation, we'll discuss sports design and marketing, what high-pressure environments teach designers, how to lead and collaborate, and what it means to build a creative career that lasts the whole season and not just one game. Steven, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Justin. Excited to be here. Ready to get into it whenever you're ready.
Yes. Well, look, we often hear the terms artist and designer used interchangeably as being one and the same, but you know just as well as I do that there is a difference. What is that difference?
Yeah, I think for me, I don't want to speak for everyone, but for me, a designer is kind of like someone who, tends to execute on an ask or a project or a request, and there's usually an end goal in mind, right? So, from an artist standpoint, like I went to art school, or I was an art student in a fine arts college, and there was a big kind of like mindset on creating with theory or idea, and maybe not know the end goal, but just kind of seeing where you go and where it takes you, and then design kind of being a little bit of that as far as like aesthetics go, but then more or less solving a problem. And so for me, that's typically how I look at it. I think a lot of people have sort of their own definition maybe, and kind of the difference. For years, I thought they were one and the same. I was like, well, design is an art, and it may be, and it probably is. And I think there's an artful nature to, some design, maybe not all design, but, for me, graphic design having an artistic side and, like I said, aesthetics or whatever. So for me, I think that's kind of how I break the two up, or, decipher the two a little bit.
Well, being multi-talented, how do you usually describe to people outside of this industry what you do?
That's a tough question to answer sometimes, where I think there are things where, people need certain things, projects, design, video, marketing strategy or whatever. And, a lot of times they like to make the claim, well, I'm not creative. And to me, it's my job to help them understand why they are creative, but kind of help trigger a different side of their thinking a little bit. And then my professional expertise comes into play, but also my skill set, where it's like, hey, if you need a logo or something, I can help with that. Well, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let's talk about what you are looking for, what you need, and then kind of put those things into practice. And so for me, it's like a creative brain, more or less, to kind of help people accomplish the goal that they're needing. And sometimes it's maybe more just, kind of mood boarding or visionary thinking, and less doing the skill that I was trained to do or I studied.
I like how you put that, being a creative brain. So we're going to pick your brain tonight. Let's dive into Overturf Design Studio.
Yeah.
What is this design studio, and what is its specialty?
Well, more or less, I think it's like my kind of just name online a little bit of whether it's me working in house or me working independently, it's where I put things. Um, I think there was a time when I started my professional career was like, well, I need to have a presence online or I need to be doing my side hustle freelance work. I think there was a huge push there from a lot of people and not towards me, but just towards the creative profession as a whole. It's like, hey, it's cool to have a full-time job, but do you have a side hustle? It's like, and so for a while it was like, well, I'm a designer, so I'm just going to call myself a designer. And my name is pretty unique. And so I was like, well, I'll just use my name. And so there was less like thought involved in it all. But for me, it's just a place where I can share my creative ideas or my creative projects that either I've worked on for myself or for other people or even in house where I was full time staff or something like that. So, um, yeah, I think that's what Overturf Design Studio is. It's just an outlet. It's me. I think at the core of it is it's Steven. Unless this like instead of like this kind of big professional agency that, sometimes people like to portray online.
On the website, and you guys can check it out at overturfdesign.studio. When I'm on there, I see a lot of projects, a lot obviously with sports design. How did you first get into sports design and what attracted you to it in the first place?
Yeah, so I was working for um call it a full service marketing company for around 6 years. And probably the last year and a half of me being there, I was like, what's next for me? I didn't feel like I was growing inside the company like I had wanted to. It was very small, and so there wasn't really a ladder to grow. There wasn't a position ahead of me that I could look to or anything like that. And so I was like, I need to learn. I need to find something that is creatively fulfilling and somewhere that I can grow inside of a company. And so I just got to thinking like, well, what do I enjoy? Who am I as a creative person and or just as a person in general? And having a sports background, I've always been involved in some sort of athletic event, whether it was me playing soccer or me going to a football game or a basketball game or talking about sports with my friends or family. And then I also liked this idea of events. So like designing and creating for an event, which you're making things and working up to a moment in time, and then that thing happens, and then you kind of once it's over, you get to do it again. And I really had enjoyed the production aspect of that all, and so I was like, well, what things have both of those? And sports creative kind of does that, right? So I enjoyed the idea of working in sports, like making things for an athletic team, professional team, college, even high school. And so do some sports branding projects when I was at the agency that I was at. I was like, man, this is really fun. Really challenging, but really fun. And then I started just to apply to jobs of like, well, I'm going to see what this looks like as working for a team or an organization that primarily works for sports. And then I landed a job at the LA Galaxy after a handful of interviews with other teams and not getting them. I thought that was it for me. And so I was like, what am I going to do? I'm never gonna get to do my dream job. At the time you're thinking those things, but then the one phone call changes everything. And so, got the job working for the LA Galaxy, moved out to LA, and then you kind of really see that working for a sports team is all things creative, just not not like super athletic. I think a lot of times people look at sports and think that it's one thing, but it's like all of it. So anything that you would have done for any sort of client, you're probably also doing it for the team that you're working for. And then at the core of it, you're working, for game day, right? You're doing everything for fans, everything for the team, and then the game happens. So there's that like event side that comes into play, the production side of it, and you hope that it goes well. You hope the team wins, and you kind of like live with the success and failures of the team as well. And so there's that highs and lows of being a sports fan right there, and you're right in the mix with it all. So yeah, I would say like that's probably how I got to where I'm at, because that, after the Galaxy, I you know went on to a different team and stuff like that, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But I think that's what attracted me most about working in sports was my love for sports as an athlete growing up and being in a family of athletes and having friends and that sort of thing, and kind of a lot of things that surround sports in general.
You've obviously now paved a career that you can look back on, and you can see why certain things had to play out to put you at certain positions. But without knowing the future, looking back at when you're at that full service agency and you're trying to get out of there and you're applying to jobs, how do you keep like that high level of positivity? Because it's tough finding
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah. I mean, in the moment and like when you first start, it's hard, but hindsight's 2020, right? So after the fact, for me, I just started applying to jobs and kind of not thinking about them after I applied. It's like, because if you get hung up on the one application, you're like, man, I hope this goes through. You may not get a call back from that one thing. And so you can't put all your eggs in one basket in that way. And so, being on the other side where I've hired people, hired designers at these teams, hundreds of people apply. And so it can be very competitive at times. And I think in the moment, it's very tough. Like I said, where, man, I hope this is a job this is a team that I really enjoy. I would really love to work for them. But if you get caught up in that, you could get disappointed really quickly, and it could affect you in a very tough way. I've dealt with it plenty of times. It's not just the one time where I didn't get a job and then the next application I got the job. It was 70 to 100 jobs that I applied to that I didn't get, for all sorts of teams at all levels. And so you kind of just have to keep moving. I think for me, it's I apply, I move forward. I apply, I move forward. I apply, I move forward. Oh, I didn't get that job. Okay, I move forward. To me, a closed door is just as good as an open one. And so when you kind of have that mindset of like, hey, that door closed, I can be disappointed, but if I sit in that, then like I think some really bad things start to happen to yourself. And so I look at closed doors as a way to move forward as well. It's like that position was not the position for me.
Yeah, and let's get into how you landed in the sports design arena, because this kind of leads into Professor Cannon and Mickey's questions that they have in the chat here. How did you actually get your foot into the door with? Let's start off with the LA Galaxy, because that
Yeah.
was the soccer club that you landed a gig with right after that other full service agency, correct?
Yep. Yep. I think that can be tough because not every organization operates the same and they're not looking for the same thing. I thought that sports design or working for a team as a designer was going to be a lot of social graphics. And it is. I think if you get on X, Twitter, Reddit, and type in sports design, you're going to see a lot of things that are cool looking. For me, that wasn't what I was doing. And so thankfully, the LA Galaxy was looking for someone who knew how to do a lot of different things. And I knew how to do a lot of different things. I think at one point I started to make, call it sports graphic design on my own, just to show that I could do it. And then once I got a couple interviews, they were like, "Hey, we're looking kind of for like a full service designer who can do all of it." Um, and I was like, "Yeah, I've done all of it. I've worked at a full service marketing company where I've had to make a logo, I've had to make an email, I've had to make a flyer, I've had to make a social graphic, And then there's the aspect of like, hey, can you do this like photo manipulation thing inside of Photoshop and make it look really cool for a game day poster? And like, it's like, oh, I maybe. And then you try your hand at it and see what you're able to do. And so I was lucky enough to be seen as like as an all around designer. But then I've also hired people who are highly skilled at like heavy Photoshop work. And so it really just depends. If you want to work for a sports team as like a full time creative, I think it's um, best to kind of look at what teams are doing and maybe create a case study on your own, of like maybe a made up team or maybe another team that you enjoy. Um, Social graphics, flyers, billboards. What is um, a banner on the website look like? So it's like building out like a full scale campaign. I think would really help your chances of maybe landing that job. But yeah, like I said, for me, it was the teams that I had worked for were looking for kind of an all-around designer, which I happen to be. So
Let's dive into the LA Galaxy in particular, because you were a graphic designer with them, and I imagine you're designing for a club with deep roots in its city. And that being said, how did the city of Los Angeles itself influence the direction that on some of these projects that you had to design for them?
I mean, it's funny that you asked that, because when I got there, the club was kind of in a gray area. A new team had entered the city, so there was now two professional soccer teams inside of Los Angeles, and so there was this competition of fighting for fandom and fighting for a market, and so there was a moment where the LA Galaxy was almost like, who are we? Where are we going as a club? We haven't won in a while, like kind of a big trophy or anything like that. And so I was fortunate to work along some people who had, they had noticed that and were like, okay, well, we need to find our fans again, and who are our fans. And so you have to start at the grassroots level, neighborhood by neighborhood, not just the full county of Los Angeles County. It's like, all right, this small group of people in Carson, California, or this small group of people in Bell, or this small group of people in Manhattan, or this small group of people in Hermosa. So that you have to like think very small, even if you're a very big organization. Of like, if we're gonna win this city back, we have to think really, really small. You know, and whether it's like small events or things that people in those areas can really take a hold of and take ownership in, I think that's how you do it, not blasting a full scale huge campaign that's like citywide. It's kind of smaller. So hopefully that makes sense, but that's what we did, and I think we did a good job of it, and really kind of made a dent in the city at that time back in 2021, 2022.
Soccer culture is incredibly community driven, right? I mean,
Yes,
that's
yes.
part of the magic. When you're dealing with fans like that who are just absolutely incredible, does that change the way you approach certain choices?
Yeah, I mean, it is a business at the end of the day, and so there are things as an organization that you have to do to be a business. You have to make money, and you have to hopefully put a team together. Thankfully, I wasn't on that side because I couldn't put a soccer team together to save my life, probably. But there is the sporting side of it where it's like, hey, we have to put a team together to win games. But because it's entertainment at the end of the day. Um, but something that we would do at both teams that I've worked for, we would put fan councils together, and these were chosen fans, diehards, and you got to sit in a room and really listen to them. And some of that may influence your decision making. Some of it may not. Some of it you have to do that's like for the business and the success of the business. But then you may take risk of like, hey, the fans are really asking for this. Let's give it to them. Let's do it. Let's see where it goes. And so there is like this risk involved to that. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're doing it for the city. You're doing it for the fans. The game itself is for the fans to be passionate about. And you'll hear it. You'll hear if it's successful or if it's a failure because they'll voice it because they're that passionate about it. So you'll know pretty quickly if they're for it or against it.
Let's move on to the Houston Texans because that's got to be a very stressful job, especially because you're not only having to focus on good quality work, but then you have these rabid fans who are then screaming on social media. They're slowly criticizing and judging or praising your work as you're creating it. How do you navigate around that when there's such a loud social media presence out there? Does it get to you at all?
I think it used to. I think there was a moment in time where, if someone was being judgmental about my work specifically, they didn't, there's not to them, there's not like a face or a person associated with a graphic that I made, right? And so they can say whatever they want. And, that's okay. I think for a moment I was like, I want to be able to do the best thing possible. And I still do. So that like fans or whoever's viewing it will enjoy it. Now, with the Texans, I think there was a moment where you're working at such a high level and such at a fast pace. Um, Kind of like the interview process. You make the graphic that you make, or you make the thing that you make, and you just keep moving forward. And if someone says something, it's like then they just say something, and it's like I don't have time to kind of sit in this one or two comments about the graphic, not being to their liking. Because I'm like, well, it served the purpose that we were trying to do. And to me, I did a good job because it served the purpose. Whether it's a social graphic that tells that a quarterback had, 3 touchdowns that day and 250 yards, or if it was a informational graphic on where to park. Like I have a purpose in both of those types of things. And if I'm doing that, then like I'm doing a good job. Now it's the aesthetic and the artful nature of it that, is very subjective. And I have a person to answer to, or I did have a person to answer to when I was at the Texans. And so it's like, if they think it's good, if their boss thinks it's good and that boss thinks it's good, then it's all right, we're good to go. But obviously you want to be the most creative person you can be. You don't want to just like slap something together and call it a day and it has all the information there. But so you want to be able to still have fun. And so comments maybe at one point got to me, but for me it's like the decision makers mattered more. Most of the time it's like, hey, there's a person that's needing this graphic and they're making the request, and it's my job to do the best I can and have it be the right information and all that and serve the purpose that it was meant to. So things used to get to me. Now they don't. Now I just kind of keep moving forward.
When you were previously with the Texans as their senior design manager, and you're looking back on your time with them, I bet there are usually a few moments that really stand out, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple projects that are really important to me, especially for my career.
What were some of the ones that were most meaningful to you?
Yeah, I think we kind of already touched about like bringing fans together and kind of really getting their thought on things. And so back in, I want to say the fall of 2022, we started thinking internally about what a kind of a rebrand for the club, for the team looked like. And some of that is visual identity change, some of it is strategy, uniforms on the field. So there's a lot that can go into that. And so we called it a rebrand. Even though we weren't really changing our primary logo, we were changing a lot of different things for the organization. And so I got to be a part of this like small group of people inside the company to kind of spearhead the project. And it was me and at the time I was just a senior designer. So it was me, my creative director, and our CMO, and ownership and president. So again, very small group, and also a marketing director. And so we worked kind of very closely on what this looked like, and acquired the league office and Nike about uniform changes and all this stuff. And they green light it, and then we started kind of going down this trail of making a official secondary logo that represented the city, and that came from fans. And so something that you know what represented Houston. The H and H, the letter of the city, represents Houston very well, and so we started working on it internally and externally um, with the league office, and then eventually it became like a full internal project for me to create this secondary logo. And so for probably the better part of a year, I was managing a team of designers because I had become a manager within that time, and then also designing day-to-day projects. But then I was also in meetings with Nike and the NFL about this uniform, and working with an agency to help kind of come up with a visual identity. And then myself, I was working on an H logo every single day. And so all that was very stressful. All that was very rewarding in the end, because once we launched, um, in I think it was April of 2024, we broke records across the league, merchandise records. We launched a whole new uniform closet with Nike that did, I mean, our social team went from like bottom of the league to top 10 within a matter of 2 days of just pure engagement. And so to be a part of that small team who helped launch that, um, along with a much bigger team of people who helped launch it, but being part of that small team, being in conversations with Nike and the league, and then also getting to design the logo that essentially represents the city and the team that you work for, and then seeing it on a helmet, later in the year, and seeing it at midfield on a game, and um, during a big Netflix Christmas Day game, seeing Beyonce perform at halftime on the logo that you created. It's kind of like this like big thing that kind of comes to head. You work so long and so hard on a singular project, and for me, it was a lot of moments, and it was just like, all right, April 24th, we launched. All right, the season started, and we have it as this big merchandise push, and people are wearing it all over the city, and you see it no matter where you go. You walk into a restaurant, you see it on a hat, and it's like, I made that. And then the game in which they're wearing that uniform that you had a huge part in, and okay, that's really cool. And so you kind of have to take a step back, or you're going to get lost. You take a step back and be like, oh wow, I really did that. And um, when I put my portfolio together of the project on my website, like that's where to me I really kind of get goosebumps about it. Is like Because when you're in the like for me, when I'm in the moment, I'm in the moment. Like I'm just like I'm watching the game, I'm part of the game. It's like, okay, yeah, the quarterback and the running back and the receivers and the coach and all the things that are happening. You don't kind of think about the logo that you created that is everywhere. It's the after where for me at least where it's, oh, I got to do that. And then when someone brings it up, whether it's a friend or someone that you've met along the way, or like you worked on that, and yeah, yeah, and they're like, holy crap, and then they have a story about it, and then seeing people get it tattooed on them, and it's just like it's very surreal. 2024 was just a crazy year of that because I get to be a part of all of that, and it's sometimes can be career defining, and for me, I think I may never get to do it again, and so I'm super thankful that I got to do it when I did.
What kinds of conversations are happening behind the scenes before you even get into the design work?
Yeah, some of it is it's I think it's like any sort of branding project. It's like, why do we want to do this? What's the goal? Is it a business decision? Sometimes some companies rebrand because their visuals are just bad or it's not tracking well with the market, and it's, hey, let's this is these visuals are 50 years old, we need to refresh it or something, and so there can be that aspect to it. I think for us it was, hey, we lost our fandom, or there is three or four other teams inside of the city that we have to compete with. And I think that's something else that a lot of people don't know is, as a professional sports team, you're competing with other professional sports teams in the city that you're in for market share, not competing against other teams in the league. And so for us, it was like, hey, we're competing against the Rockets, the Astros, the Houston Dynamo, the Houston Dash. So it's like we want to be the number one team in the city. We're not filling up the stadium anymore. There's no positive conversations really around the team because they haven't been winning lately. So for us, it was like positioning yourself in the marketplace in a better light. And some of that comes with visuals. Some of it can come with just marketing strategy. For us, it was everything. And so there was a lot of conversations that I may not even been a part of before the creative kind of got into it. It was, why do we want to do this? What's our business goals? How are we going to do this? How long is it going to take? What are the steps that we got to do to get there? What are the steps we got to do before we start? So I think it's more or less that, and then the visuals kind of come after the fact, and the rollout kind of comes after that. So I think for us, we did it inside of 2 years, when a project like that for an NFL team, uniforms included, could take 3 to 4 years. So we definitely expedited the project.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on, and that's why I wanted to kind of get into that, because I think when fans see these rollouts, they don't think about the behind the scenes conversation, all the
Right.
preparation. And there's also like tension between honoring the past and building for the future. How did you and the team think about like where to draw that line? Like if it was too far?
It's a good point because I think some clubs, some organizations have a lot of history, and the last thing that you want to do is upset fans who have ownership in that history. I think of teams like the Green Bay Packers or the New York Yankees. Like these are household names, and you may not even watch sports, but you know who those two teams are. For us at the Texans, we're a younger team. We started in 2002. And so there was this idea of like, well, we really haven't changed at all. We haven't gone through this process of kind of, you know, evolutionizing who we are a little bit. And so, we touched on fans and bringing in fans to be a part of the process. And so that's what we did. We had a lot of fan council meetings and kind of these group studies to ask fans, like, hey, what would you want if we were to do this? What would you want to do? Um, and so we're bringing them along. As we started to create things, we started to show them. Obviously, there's some like NDAs involved and legal things that go on there, but we started showing them uniform options and showing them logo options and talking to them about colors and whatever. And so like we were getting the kind of their firsthand experience. So when we did launch, when we did create the thing, there was no surprises, and we were confident in what we were making. I think for us, we wanted to push that line. We wanted to be a disruptor kind of in the marketplace and wanted to shock some people, and so we definitely pushed that line a little bit further than maybe other teams would. The teams that have kind of that history where fans want the thing that they've always had, for 100 years. Where we were like, no, we're kind of creating new things. We're a team or an organization of newness, not old. And so I think there is, you're kind of fighting some marketing things there too, where we don't have a massive history to kind of fall back on and like tell that story. It's like, well, we're kind of writing that story as we go. And so, talking about the H logo and that sort of thing, I get to be a part of sports history by that, and 50 years from now, someone may be talking about it and, it's like, oh yeah, the designer was Steven Overturf. Maybe, who knows? So I think it's a lot of that as well.
You probably had several opportunities to meet and interact with the players, right?
Less than you think. I think there's kind of a distinct line of the business operations side and the football operations side, and soccer was that as well at the LA Galaxy. Where, hey, there are certain positions inside the company that do operate on both and that do interact with players quite a bit. For me, I think maybe twice a year, 2 or 3 times a year, I interacted with players. We would see them a lot in the building, but it was mainly like media day. Anytime that we had like a video shoot or a photo shoot that I was involved in, I interacted with them, but it was very professional, very like, hey, here's what I need you to do. Let's, I don't want to waste your time. I've got 5 minutes with you, maybe 10 minutes with you. So let's do it. And then we would do it and then they would move on. And so, but you get to know players, like not in a deep way, but like you see them walking around the building and they may recognize you from one of those media day events and they may, say, hey. I was thankful enough to kind of be around a few players more frequently than I think most people. And so you just kind of get to know them, like maybe a first name basis and a high five here or there, but that's really it. For me, at least. Others get a lot closer.
Hey, it's more than a lot of us here listening to this broadcast. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. What lessons from sports branding have stayed with you, even now in your independent work?
I wouldn't even say it's sports branding. I think it's like all branding. I think I treat every project, whether it's for a local business or a massive sports organization, the same. Of like, hey, there's a goal in mind. It needs to be done at a high level. I'm going to give as much energy as I possibly can to it. The size may change, the length of time may change, but like my mindset never does. And so, and I had that kind of mindset when I started my career. I was raised in a family where, anything less than hard work is like no work. It's like you're not even putting putting forth a real effort. And so, I was raised to work hard at no matter what I do, and I think I've just carried that wherever I've gone. And a sports team is, just another thing. It's a large thing, like it's a big organizational thing, That there's a lot of people a lot of eyes on it, a lot of fans. To a degree, it's a global thing where people around the world are seeing your work to some level, and um, you don't really realize it because you're just in a room with your coworkers and you're just making things, and um, but yeah, then once it gets tweeted or put on Instagram, it's thousands upon thousands of people seeing it, and but I think a lot of people have the same sort of projects and don't realize how many people are viewing it and how many people enjoy it. I think just working for a sports team, it's amplified because it's a huge market, and um, it's on TV, and it's everywhere.
This question comes in from Mickey again in the audience, who asked, "Would the players see the design campaign before the launch, or does everyone see it all at the same time?"
Yeah, I would say like the moments that we had like really big campaign launches, like players and fans aren't seeing everything. It was just in the breadth of 2 years that we were, brand, we were evolving our brand or rebranding. We had those conversations with fans, and we actually brought players in too. Like, hey, y'all the ones that are going to be wearing these uniforms. Do y'all like what y'all are seeing? What would you want in a uniform if you could design it? So there were those conversations, but we weren't including everyone in every single campaign or every single launch. It was just the moment that we were in, and the time that I was there. There was a lot of those internal meetings and conversations with fans, but players were involved on some of it.
Well, when a project finally does launch, whether it's a campaign, merch drop, or uniform, what's the first thing you personally look for to know if it actually worked?
For me, it's like, is people buying the T-shirt, or are people buying the hat? Um, I think as someone who likes that sort of thing at like merchandise, when someone purchases with their own money a thing that you made, I think that's what is finds it to be successful or not. And like, but also there's this, your peers, like the design um community as a whole, like, do they think it's good? I think there's this, it's like if you're a chef and Gordon Ramsay says that your food is good, you like have this idea that like, oh, my food is good if, the best chef in the world also finds it to be good. And so there is that part of it was like, well, the logo that I created, the designs that I created, if other designers and logo makers, if they say it's good, then I have a confident feeling that it's a strong logo. But I think at the end of the day, I really only cared about what fans were thinking and if they were purchasing the t-shirt or the hat or the hoodie or the jersey that I was involved in. Because I was like, yeah, like if they're buying it, I know that they enjoy it. Because most of the time, people are not putting a t-shirt on or a hat on if they don't like it. So
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit to the mentorship stuff because that's a big part of your career. And I want to ask you,
yeah,
what made you want to get involved with the Adobe Creative Apprenticeship Program?
it's a great question. The main reason why I wanted to be a part of the Adobe mentorship program or apprenticeship program as a mentor, I started my career, and for the most part, every step of my career, I didn't feel like there was a designer or creative that I could look up to, that could teach me things. I kind of had to figure a lot out on my own, and not even like on a skill set, but just like how to be a creative inside of organization, or how do I level up my skill set, or hey, teach me tips and tricks inside of Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign to you know f- find that new thinking or something. And so um, there have been people in my life that have come along who were not creatives, who were not designers, who were those people. And so I've always had this kind of leadership mentality. Like, I want to be a leader to people. I want to serve people, help grow individuals, wherever I'm at, if I'm inside of an organization or if I'm with another group of people, like I want to serve them, inspire them, help them grow. And I think we all kind of grow together by doing that. And so I wanted to give back. I was like, how can I help the young creative have another creative to look up to ask questions, to kind of give them some hard truths. And so that's why I did it. And I've been, I, had my first mentee apprentice this year, and her name's Georgia, and she's great. And it was a very rewarding experience on, I think, on both of our ends. And so, I wanted to do it because I wanted to give back. I wanted to give someone the thing that I didn't have or that I felt like I didn't have.
So this question comes in from my producer in the audience, Catherine, who would love to hear you talk about your experience at Adobe Max this year and your case study on the stickers and swags you made for it.
My bootleg Adobe Max stickers and T-shirt. So I have a hard time finding maybe things to create for myself. I'm always creating for other people, and I think I enjoy that. And so, there's often people saying, "Oh, you need to create for yourself and find that, that enjoyment, and that's how you level up, and that's how you get better." And so for me, doing these Adobe events, going to Max now a couple of times, being invited to Max, and I've spoke at a Create Now, like it's given me a space to create something for it. And it's kind of like a small passion project. And so, I lived in Los Angeles for little over a year, and In-N-Out is a huge a huge West Coast fast food chain, and it's got like a cult following. And so I was like, how do I make something that is Adobe Max related, but also is related to Los Angeles? And so I made a kind of like a mashup of In-N-Out and Adobe Max. And so you can go on my website and look at everything that I did, but I wanted to create a sticker pack. And so I made 5 stickers that all had illustrations kind of based around In-N-Out, and the naming was design related or creative related. And then the T-shirt that I had made, and the colorway of it all was blue and white. And the reason why it was blue and white was partially the Los Angeles Dodgers, and then also partially of a kind of a famous art style in California, specifically Southern California. It's like Chicano blue ink drawings. And so, you could probably quickly Google that and a lot will come up. And so I was like, this is a great way of merging kind of these 3 or 4 types of things together. Some of that's not really communicated, but for me, it was a internal passion project that I was like, I'm doing this for me. Made a bunch of stickers, handed them out, made a few T-shirts, gave them to some friends. And so it was really fun. It took me a while, but I think in the end it was a good time. And so I'm glad I got to do it for, my time at Max, even though it wasn't an official Adobe thing. So,
and a lot of times as designers, we forget how fun being a designer really is. How do you make that really fun career? Like what's that missing piece that maybe they don't teach you in school?
yeah, I mean, I think it's different for everybody. For some people, it's the act of creating something, and it's that artist inside of you that's just making things. I think for me, that's what makes it enjoyable, is creating things. Some of it's people, which I also have a good time with. Like I love relationships. I love people. Being an independent designer, it can be really tough because you may go into your own design studio and you're the only person in there for 8 hours a day or something like that. And so for me, it's like I want to be around people. I want to work with people. I want to be talking to people. Um, and so I think it's different. It's you may not get some of that in school, where school may teach you how to do the thing, and walk through a project from A to B. And so when you're starting out, I think you kind of have to find it for yourself. And it's not going to be a neon light pointing you to here's what it is. I think it's for me it was the process of making things and seeing the smile on the person's face who needed it, and saying, "Hey, thank you so much. This is great. This is why I needed this." And then seeing the result of the project you made on the other end of it. And but to you or to whoever else, it may be something that I don't find enjoyable or I don't find part of my everyday need or something like that. And so it could be like the administrative side of it and project managing. It's like, oh, I really love project managing. That's not it for me, but it could be for someone else. And so I think it just depends. I know that may not be like a hard answer for you, but for me, it's just kind of different.
Let's get into like some freelancing tips because I think one of the hardest parts and one of the main questions we get asked a lot here in the server is how do you go about finding and more importantly keeping clients? I know that there's some of those Elance sites out there like Fiverr and Upwork, but do you use those or how do you get your clients?
Yeah, I think for me, now that I've worked at a few places and have, connections, all of my marketing essentially is word of mouth. I don't know. I think I could probably count on one hand of the number of projects that have come from maybe my website or social media account or anything like that. It's all been friends of people or my friends themselves needing projects or a former coworker that's needing something or they had heard about something, you know. And then it's also, I think a big tip is just put yourself out there. I have so many creative friends, design friends that I've met through Max, or Adobe things. Um, they talk about all the time, just like just post your work, just keep sharing your work, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or wherever. Just share it, and you'll be surprised on where things came. And then when I went fully independent, back in June of this year, I was kind of afraid of that. Of like, I don't have any. I have like one client that I'm constantly doing stuff for, and it's because I just reached out to them one day on Instagram. It was like, "Hey, I noticed that you're needing a designer. Let's talk." And I got that, client. But I had posted something on LinkedIn back in like July, of this year of just like, "Hey, I'm working independently. If you've got some projects you need to work on, let's talk." And it's LinkedIn, so it was very professional and whatever. And I had a link to my website just to kind of show my work. But then I got a message from someone, who I had no clue who they were, but we had a mutual connection, and I ended up talking with the person for like an hour one day, and that started a snowball of design projects, um, all within sports, believe it or not. And so there's something to be said about just sharing your work and just sharing you a little bit, because like you don't know what fish will bite, and it may take some time. It may not be overnight. It may take you 6 months to kind of land that one big client or something like that, or a retainer. And so word of mouth has always been big for me. Others, it's been online presence, but as long as I can keep talking to people, in person and networking in that way, like, "Hey, I'm Steven," face to face at a coffee shop or something, and then telling them what I get to do for a living. you just never know what they may need or who they are. Sometimes a person next to you on the train or the bus may be a marketing director at a big company, and they may need somebody. So um, be friendly, be nice, be professional, put yourself out there. You just never know where it could go.
Yeah, and that's so true. It just the conversations, the relationships, the connections, all of this is how you really expand upon this idea of networking. And I think a lot of people forget this, right? They think that there's this easy way. You just go to a site, apply to a job. No, no, no. There's a lot of the jobs that are being, recruited for or hired for. They're the ones that aren't advertised. Like Catherine just mentioned here in the chat, she landed a UX design gig by posting on LinkedIn, and someone found her via the hashtag she used. So you just have to keep putting yourself out there. You have to keep reminding people that you are there. Like you mentioned, Stephen, right? You were having the conversations back then, and eventually they'll lead to the projects of now. Now, if you are new to the Adobe Creative Career Discord, I'd like to take a moment to share one of the coolest things we're working on right now, and that would be the Adobe Creative Apprenticeship Program. This program connects aspiring creative people like you with top creative companies, providing the actual training and experience that you need, which also looks amazing on a resume. Think of it like the ultimate internship meets mentorship opportunity. But wait, that's not all. You see, there is another aspect to the program, and it's called commissioned projects. This is where you can get even more experience working on an actual paid project with Adobe. Yes, that's right, Adobe as your first client. Seriously. The details on the Creative Apprenticeship Program, the commissioned projects, and more incredible career resources can all be found at behance.net/resources. That's behance.net/resources. To learn more about tonight's guest, Steven Overturf, you can check out his website at overturfdesign.studio. That's OVERTURF design.studio. Or you can follow him on Instagram, TikTok, on LinkedIn, and X. And if we didn't get a chance to cover any of your questions tonight, feel free to reach out to Steven directly following the show. But since we only have a few more minutes as we're wrapping up here with our wonderful guest, Steven Overturf, if you do have a question, please post it in the chat, or like I said, ask him directly following the show. But on that note, Steven, what do you personally look for when you're evaluating good work?
I think like if I'm hiring for someone, I think it's one thing. If it's inspiration, it's another. Um, some of it, I don't think some of it can be explained. I think there's this like intrinsic like, oh, I just like that. There's like some tooth to it. There's some personality to it that I'm not getting with other things. And so for me, I think that's what I look at. I don't know if that answers the question per se, but when I see things, and if for me, if it's good or if it's bad, I think it just got to speak to me a little bit. Or if it's like unique in a way that I don't really find common.
So you're not one of those people who likes to just see the same old copy paste, rinse and repeat type stuff.
Yeah, there's design out there that it's like, oh yeah, that's good design. It's been done before. It's good, but for me, it's like I want a little bit more character. I want to see some things that has some tooth to it. Maybe it's a little bit of texture. Maybe it's like, oh, that looks a little hand done, or that's got some personality. And I think that's what I gravitate to, like vintage sports a lot of. man, there was some sort of like grittiness to this, this like old jersey or this old, type. Um, it wasn't just like done in a computer, it was like hand done. And um, there's a little bit of just, yeah, I don't know, like history involved in it. And so I think that's what I look at when I look at branding or design or creative work is it's got some character. It feels lived in almost.
Well, how do you decide what to put into an online portfolio? Because that's also a big question that people tend to ask.
Yeah, that one gets tricky. I think it's a few parts to that. One is if you're trying to land certain work, you should probably show that type of work. Whether it's work that you want to do, so make something that is like that, like I mentioned earlier. Um, Also put in passion projects of like I really enjoyed this. I've heard so many stories of people landing jobs and landing projects from their passion project, from the thing that they made for themselves. Like, and then they get into a meeting and they're like, "Oh, we really love that T-shirt you designed," and it's like, "Man, I did that for me. I didn't do that for anybody else. I'm glad that someone else likes it." So there is that. Um, and then I would also say, like, is there some work out there that speaks volumes from a kind of like a bigger picture, bigger scale? For me, it's like my sports related work, right? Like I did that on a bigger level. And so I think that's also good to show of, hey, this was kind of a big project and you can talk about it a lot. And it may not be the best design in the world and more the most creative, but it's like, hey, I can see that you know how to work at a certain level. It's not just these really small things, it's really big things. And being able to explain what you did and how every party was involved and how you were involved, I think is also good to add to your portfolio.
Yeah, and it's so great that you mentioned the passion projects type of aspect because I'd interviewed a digital artist named Sasha Vinogradova, and she was really into Game of Thrones. So she actually,
Love Game of Thrones.
yeah, well, she developed some artwork, posted it out there, and sure enough, the creative team they approached her and invited her to develop the logo for House of the Dragon.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, so
I
you
would love to see that work.
yeah, well, I'll drop a, link to that episode here in the chat. And for those of you listening on demand, just search for Sasha Vinogradova, digital artist, and in the archives, and then you can listen to that show in particular. But speaking of previous shows, so I just interviewed Chelsea Tams.
Awesome. We love Chelsea, by the way. Chelsea's a great friend.
Amazing, amazing person. She has a question in the chat. Who is one client you'd love to work with?
Ooh. Man, that's a really hard question. I oftentimes don't think about that. I think it's less the clients and the type of projects that I think about. Like I'm always enjoying doing some sort of merchandise, whether it's like pins, patches, t-shirts, hats, that sort of thing. As far as client goes, I love working with Adobe, love doing Adobe stuff. Um,
Well,
man,
if you had no obstacles,
yeah.
and you had access to everyone in the world, what's the first person or first corporation or brand that comes to mind?
Probably Dr. Pepper. Um, I love Dr. Pepper. It is my drink of choice. Um, and so even if it was to do something really small, like custom T-shirt or poster or something like that, I think that would be really fun. It's one of my favorite um, products. Um, Not so much their brand per se. I don't think of them as like a huge creative company, but I think when it comes to something that is very personal to me, Dr. Pepper feels very personal to me. Like if they were to change the recipe, I would have a huge problem. So I think doing something with Dr. Pepper would be really fun. Um, yeah, I don't know. Or there's all kinds of things, but I'd have to really sit on that.
Well, that works. So, Dr. Pepper, if you are listening out there, or I should say, the creative
Yep.
team behind Dr. Pepper, if you're listening to this broadcast, get in touch with Steven Overturf and
Yes.
give him some projects. All right. So, this question comes in from Diego Miranda, who asks, how important is it for you to find people that have multiple skills instead of people that just specialize in one thing? Like a graphic designer that also does motion or 3D work. And the reason they ask that is because sometimes it feels like many of these jobs want you to know how to do everything. But how important is that to you?
It's not very important to me. I think, from one organization to the next, um, they may need a lot of people and they don't have a big budget. And so that's where you're seeing a lot of these job postings with, hey, we're looking for a graphic designer, but we need them to do motion graphics and 3D sculpting and video editing and video production. That's like 6 different jobs. That's 6 different positions rolled into one. And I think it's a little unfair um, to a lot of people. I think it's okay to find someone who is just a really good graphic designer or just a really good motion graphics. Sure, it benefits everyone if they know a little bit more than just that. Like if for me, I'm starting to venture into the world of video editing a little bit. I think the company that I work for next, um, it will benefit them a little bit if I know more than just graphic design, right? If I know a little bit of video editing, I know how to approach certain projects because of that. Or maybe I can get my um, feet wet a little bit and do a video project for them. I think when it comes to, hey, now you're solely doing the thing that you weren't hired for, I think it can get really tricky. Um, and so I wish companies would do a better job of like really kind of dissecting those positions a little bit and differentiating them where, hey, we need a graphic designer. We also need a video producer. We also need a motion graphic, creator, designer. And so I don't think it's super important, but I would also, as a creative yourself, um, just be doing things that aren't just your single lane. I think it's important to learn new skill sets, um, but it also with that comes a new way of thinking of like, okay, I can approach this project a little differently because I learned how to do this other thing that is not my normal, let's call it graphic design skill set. I think as an art director or creative director, a lot of that comes into play where, oh, I know how to design this, but I also know how to approach it from a video perspective because I have this other skill set. So, how I would answer that question, I don't think it's like super important, but as a creative yourself, I would also encourage just to be learning new things all the time.
When someone looks at your body of work years from now, what do you hope they understand about how you approached people, craft, and purpose?
Yeah, I think with intention, I think is the most important thing. Less skill set. Like I think like I'm a pretty good designer. I'm not the best in the room. I'm not trying to be the best in the room. I think what I'd like to think that separates me from a lot of people is how I interact with them. Um, I think my character and me, I'm devoting my attention to those people. Um, Not those projects, not the logo, the making side of it, but it's like them as individuals. I've had a lot of clients who have come to me and like laid out their project on my desk, and we've talked about it. And a lot of my first questions are like, "Hey, tell me about you. I want to know you. We'll get to the design thing that you're needing, but it's like, let me understand you better because when I do get to the design of it." it's so intentional about them and knowing them and what they're requesting and what their needs are. Because it's very easy to make the thing that I want to make, but if I'm really listening to them and understanding what they're looking for, I'm able to accomplish their goals, not necessarily mine. And I think that's really important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. To a lot of the people that I mentor and give, creative advice to, I usually tell them, once you get the call back, they're already impressed with your work.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
on the actual interview, they just want to get to know you, to
Absolutely.
understand, yeah, who you are. And as Professor Cannon puts it best in the chat, looking for designers we can hang out with for 8 hours a day, as well as skill level. So,
Yes. I've had the opportunity to hire designers, and your portfolio gets you the interview. And I'm not interviewing you unless I think your work is good, you know. And so you get past the portfolio side of it, and you're getting down to the person. And so my questions as a manager, a hiring manager, is more about them than it is anything else. I'm not asking, how would you set type in this sort of project, or how would your approach to color theory? It is like, hey, what do you like to do? What is your mindset behind this sort of thing inside the workplace? Like, it's what Professor Cannon is saying. It's like, can I hang out with you? Can I work with you? Are you fun? Do you enjoy laughing? Like, do you enjoy talking to others? So it's a lot of that. And yeah.
let me ask you this, because I love to look at things from a futurist perspective. And since you have a lot of experience, more so than I do, and that a lot of us in the audience may have, with sports in particular, where do you think sports, not just design, but just sports in general, might be headed next? Because we're already seeing how the emergence of sports betting has evolved, for better or worse, and its tremendous influence on the game. Like, do you think that will have as much or even more of an impact that it does now? Or will there be something else that kind of revolutionizes the game?
Yeah, the game itself, maybe not so much. I think the way fans and people interact with sports will. And we're already starting to see it. I think a lot of it's through social media. Um, Teams are becoming more like lifestyle brands than they are a sports team. Not so much the players and athletes playing the game, but like how you market to people. And so it's less about showing the highlights from the night before, where, maybe 10 years ago, that's all it was. It was like, hey, here's what the team did, win, loss, the big play, whatever. Now it's more about the personalities on the team, and what are the team doing? What's the teams doing with fans week to week and day to day? And I think that's where sports is headed. It's so much more about the representation and the personality behind the organization, and less about the wins and losses. But that still matters. I think that's why we all watch sports, is the wins and losses. Um, but you see it in media every single day of, oh, this athlete is dating this pop star. That's very normal. Whereas maybe that used to not be the thing, but now it's like the talk of the town.
Is there anything you wish someone had told you before you embarked out on your own and started your career journey?
Yeah, like, it's not about you. Um, I know that may sound weird, but there was a moment early in my career where I was making everything about me. It was a very selfish mindset. And so I had a pretty hard conversation one time with a boss of mine, and it wasn't delightful. Like, it was a hard thing. It was a hard conversation, and the things that were said were, hey, Steven, you're being selfish, or hey, it's you're being hard to work with. And like, that really kind of shifted a lot of perspective for me. And with the way I was going about doing things inside of a work as a designer, creative, whatever professional. Um, and so I think the earlier on that you can get it across, like kind of get it instilled within your thinking of, hey, this is not about you as a designer. It's about providing something and serving other people. I think will get you so much further, whether it's your career or whatever. I think that's. I wish I would have known that like in college and like got that understanding, because I think I would be a lot further along in my career than I am now if I would have if gotten that. Just don't be so selfish. Probably is what I would have told my younger self.
Wise words right there. That's why we have this show, We're giving you guys the tools and the insight and the advice that you may not learn in school. You may not learn in a YouTube tutorial or, on some sort of, tweet or Instagram post. This is real talk right here. These are real conversations with real people. Let me ask you this, Steven, because you're on all of these platforms. Where is your preferred mode of communication, or where can people best reach out to you?
Probably Instagram DM, to be honest. Like, I don't do a lot of conversating on social platforms really, anyway, but I think Instagram is where I kind of keep up with a lot of my other design friends and community for the most part. Um, Less like LinkedIn, where I think it's probably easier to do that, but I think for me, it's just like Instagram is typically like send me a DM on Instagram and I'll probably shoot you a message back.
Got it. Well, there you go, everyone. Check out Steven Overturf on Instagram. You search for Overturf Design Studio. You can also find him on TikTok over there at the same thing, Overturf Design Studio. You can find him on LinkedIn and X under Steven Overturf, or you can just check out his website at overturfdesign.studio. That's overturfdesign.studio. If you enjoyed this program, you're going to have to catch all the latest updates for the next Spotlight sessions and all of this exciting content we have right here in the Adobe Creative Career Discord by following the upcoming events calendar at the top of the server so you can see what's coming next. But I also want to thank my show producer, Catherine Chu, Lisa Temple, live moderator Elizabeth, and the entire Adobe crew for sponsoring this program and helping to bring it alive. But most importantly, thank you, Discord community, and to everyone who tuned in to listen to me, your host, Justin Bamforth. You can always catch me on Discord, LinkedIn, or over on my website, justinbamforth.com. Until next time, everyone, take care. For more conversations with creative professionals, subscribe to the Spotlight Sessions podcast or check out the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Links are posted in the show notes.